Hey, everybody, this is TJR.
And this is Robert Kinsler.
And today is the big day, the release of what is being referred to as the last Beatles song, entitled Now and Then. The release of this track completes a series of reunion tracks that started on the anthology series back in the 90s. Originally recorded in demo form by John Lennon and then given to Paul McCartney in 1994 by Yoko Ono. McCartney and the remaining Beatles, George Harrison and Ringo Starr, created two new songs from the recordings. This was for the anthology series, Free as a Bird and Real Love. And the third track, Now and Then, was intended for Anthology 3, but was abandoned due to the limitations of the technology of the time. And so yesterday we saw a 12-minute little short mini documentary was released about the new song. Any thoughts on that you want to share first before we talk about the actual song itself?
Yeah, it was just really amazing to see that and then get the insight into like some of the things you touched on just now, TJ, just to hear from Peter Jackson and Ringo Starr, and then some of the archival recordings from George Harrison. It was just really interesting to see how the history of this track, which, like you said, goes all the way back to the late 70s when John Lennon first demoed it with just a piano.
Yes, and I felt like this documentary this little mini doc does a good job of just kind of filling in anybody who's not aware what this is about, how is this happening, how did it happen. It just gives them a good, very succinct synopsis of the history behind it. I like the fact that we have some interview segments with Sean Ono Lennon, talking about how people thought that John Lennon wasn't really working on music during the time that he was raising him, but he was all the time working on music. He just wasn't being beheld to any record labels. He just wasn't involved in any recording contracts. He didn't have any of that pressure to tour or record. He was just, his life was primarily focused on family, but he was always playing music. He was always working on music. He was always recording demos. So I like being able to hear that. And I'm sure a lot of people did. Finally, now, of course, we have the track. And I should mention that while the documentary released yesterday, the little mini doc, tomorrow, on Friday, we'll see the release of the music video directed by Peter Jackson. And I know you have some thoughts on that you'd like to share.
Well, yeah, actually, just before we got ready to shoot this video, I got a press release from the record label, and it says the part of the headline says the Beatles Now and Then music video details in global premiere plans. So what I thought I would do is let everyone know. Let me just read from this section because everyone will want to know about this. It says the Now and Then music video will premiere worldwide tomorrow. That's on Friday, November 3rd. And that's going to be at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Greenwich Mean Time. Or if you're on the East Coast of the US at 9 a.m. or on the West Coast like we are, TJ, that will be so we get to see it at 6 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. That's going to premiere on the Beatles YouTube channel. And then the press release goes on to say the poignant and humorous video invites viewers to celebrate the Beatles' timeless and enduring love for one another with John, Paul, George, and Ringo as they create the last Beatles song. Now, what I'm going to do is post this entire media release on my Music Worth Buying site, the Rock and Roll Truth blog, because it's pretty amazing. Peter Jackson goes into great detail how he was very reluctant to do a music video. He says there really wasn't enough film footage. There was all kinds of things but then all of a sudden the surviving Beatles, members of Harrison's family and Lennon's family, they all contributed. And there's even, this has been out there, even Pete Best provided some unique and singular footage that he had to help bring this about, and it sounds really amazing. I can't wait to see it tomorrow morning.
Wow, yeah, this does sound like it'll be special. And we'll leave a link to your Rock and Roll Truth blog page here under more information here on this video, so that you can go check that out. And so with all that said, I guess it's time to talk about the song. So much hype leading up to it. Robert, I'm going to let you go first. I'm going to let you kind of discuss your thoughts first. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so let me just say from the outset, I think it's a beautiful song, very wistful and yearning. It really, in here I'm talking about the lyrics. It really taps into that desire someone has to be with someone else, and I think that lyrically, I think it's a very simple song, but I think it really taps very strongly into that emotional undercurrent. At least on the recording we get here, as opposed to the original demo that I heard, John's voice is clear, and I think that's maybe the most surprising thing, that compared to the demo, how great he sounds. Obviously, the technology here to make his voice sound great on a 2023 recording, I think works. Now, the bigger question is how great is the song? Does it fit in with the Beatles' amazing legacy? I'd say here, this is obviously not, I Am the Walrus. It's not, A Day in the Life. It's not of that power. But is it a very good song? Does it really kind of complete maybe the Beatles' journey that's gone on for 60 years? I think it does a good job of that. I've listened to the song, I'd say today, 6 or 7 times. Really, really like it. And I like what the other Beatles brought to it in terms of what Ringo's drumming and Paul's bass playing. And how the arrangement was kind of fleshed out, how it starts kind of with just the piano and John's voice, and then the arrangement, obviously the other things come atop that. And I think for the most part, I think it works. I think you need more time than a day to really say, hey, is this a great song? Is this a timeless song? I don't think we know that yet. I think the Beatles version of Free as a Bird is stronger than Real Love. I think so. We'll see how this, we'll see how Now and Then, plays out over the long term. But my initial reaction is I'm very excited by it, and I think it is a very good recording. And I think it's pretty amazing what Jeff Lynne and Giles Martin and what everybody did, with all the technology to bring it to completion.
Yeah, definitely. It is a miracle of technology. Regardless of how anybody feels, it's amazing that we get this. It is a gift. I know that you and I should mention here that prior to filming, you and I did not discuss our opinions. So I've heard your thoughts for the first time. You're about to hear mine for the first time. And all you told me before we started was that, you listened to it. Then after you had had a couple listens, you read what others had to say about it. Some of them were glowing with praise. Others were more tepid.
Right.
But you said you wrote down all your thoughts before you listened to anyone else, so that it couldn't influence you. And I wanted to mention that. You said that to me off camera.
Yeah, thanks for reminding. Yeah, because that is true. I read there was a review on Rolling Stone, and there was a review, I think, in the Washington Post. I haven't looked at a lot of but those are the two. And the writer, and I'm sorry I don't remember the name. So Rolling Stone said this was a true gift to Beatles fans. This final statement from the 4 members of the band, and I'm closer to that, in agreement to that as a Beatles fan, it's really, having been a Beatles fan basically, 99% of my life. I mean, it's great to get this gift. And like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing, how it resonates with me, let's say a week from now, a month from now, a year from now. But I definitely want to hear your initial thoughts too, TJ.
Obviously. Thank you. So yeah, and like you, I listened, I wrote down notes first before I looked at what anyone else had to say, because I didn't want that influencing me. I am going to start out by saying that I found this to be a very haunting and even very mournful song to go out on. I noticed that the credits on this song were to John Lennon only when I looked at the credits on Tidal, because that's where I streamed it, as versus McCartney and Lennon. Of course, we know that in the later years of the Beatles history that the Lennon-McCartney tagline was sometimes tenuous. Free as a Bird, the first of the reunion tracks, was credited to all 4 Beatles, and Real Love was just credited to John Lennon. I bring that up because at times, as I've listened to it, it is at times felt more like a Lennon song than a Beatles song to me. That's neither good nor bad. That's just an observation.
Hmm.
There's something else I'm going to say about it that is neither good nor bad. It's just an observation. Paul's slide guitar, which he did as kind of a tribute to George Harrison, because George Harrison would always contribute so much beautiful slide guitar work. Just his choice of notes,
Right.
I've played guitar. I've never played much slide guitar. I think only in one instance have I ever done it. And I don't know if George Harrison is a great slide guitar player or not, to be honest, but he always knew what notes to pick. He was always very evocative with the notes he picked. It would just sing beautifully when George Harrison played slide guitar on both Beatles recordings and on his own solo recordings. And I think that Paul McCartney did a very good job with this slide guitar. I think it feels more like David Gilmour of Pink Floyd, however, than George Harrison.
Right.
Again, that's not good or bad. That's just an observation. So at times, this does feel to me more like a John Lennon song than a Beatles song. Now, the primary thing I want to get across with my thoughts on this track is that, unlike, say, Free as a Bird or Real Love, which I listened to again after I heard the song a number of times, I listened to them again. Those two tracks I can remember at the time made me feel happy, ecstatic, uplifted. And listening to Now and Then, I'm feeling more sad than anything else. And not sad in a bad way, like, oh, this track's terrible. Oh, what a waste. Not like that. No, just emotionally sad. This song feels so mournful to me. And I feel emotionally sad as I listen to it. I guess it's a good song because it's making me feel so strongly. It's just not what I was expecting to feel. I thought, Now and Then maybe there'd be some kind of they try to pull at my heartstrings. It's the last Beatles song. Let's pull at your heartstrings and make you feel that kind of, sadness, like, at the end of maybe E.T., but I think this song really just, more than any other song, we're seeing a lot of music artists now reflecting on their past lives, reflecting on their mortality, artists that we grew up with. And they're in that place now where that's what they're writing about, so many of them. And this song, even though the lyrics may not be as pointed, for some reason, it just really, more than any other, made me reflect on life and mortality. And maybe that's just where I'm wired right now. I don't know. It's clearly a beautiful song. The production is amazing. What they've done is amazing with the technology. I really do hope they will go back to Free as a Bird and Real Love and maybe give those the same treatment. Keep the originals, but give us the same treatment, just to hear that these are that technology, especially on Free as a Bird, where Lennon's voice is very buried and it couldn't be helped. Right. And I understand that Paul McCartney even had to sing along to Lennon's part, doing his best Lennon impersonation, so to speak, to strengthen that vocal when they worked on that back in the 90s. I understand he had to do that. Okay. I remember reading interviews where he talked about that. He just was trying to strengthen the vocal part. And I totally believe it had nothing, that's what it was about.
Because back then, for people that might not, they couldn't separate the vocals from, let's say, the instrumental tracks.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were all embedded. They weren't separate multi-tracks.
There was nothing they could do. It was just a cassette.
Yeah, exactly. So
all they could do is,
now with Peter Jackson's new technology, they can do all these incredible things.
They can pull it all apart and create it as if it was recorded separately in the studio. Yeah, it's amazing. So I do hope they will go back with those tracks and do that. But I do think it's a very beautiful song. And like you, I don't think it's The Long and Winding Road. I don't think it's A Day in the Life. It's a good song, though.
Yeah, it is
definitely a good song. But time and history is the real judge on these things. And I do wish that we could have, because of YouTube, because of the way YouTube works, we have to get our reaction in the day of. I would love to come back a month from now and see how we feel. I would love to. Exactly. Maybe the viewers would like that also. Yeah. But I wish we could live with it more, because I felt a huge gamut of emotions while I listened that I was not expecting. I was not expecting to feel such a deep sense of sorrow listening to this track. And I don't mean in a bad way. because songs can make you feel very sad.
Mhm.
You know, only in music is sadness beautiful. But I just felt such a deep level of sorrow. You know, this is, to quote the Doors, the end.
Yeah,
And
it
it
is.
affected me stronger than I would have imagined. Those are my thoughts briefly. Side note, I should mention that the version of Love Me Do that's on the single version, of course, if you purchase it physically, it comes as a single with Love Me Do, their first single ever. And it also, when you play it on streaming, we both listen to it on Tidal. It's a single where you have both this track and Love Me Do. But the Love Me Do track, if I'm not mistaken, is not the version that is on Past Masters, the original single version that was released back in the early 60s. This is actually a version that had Ringo Starr on drums because initially, the way I understand it, George Martin was not 100% on the demo that was recorded with Ringo. Ringo had not been with the band for very long.
Mhm.
It was, I know this was very upsetting for Ringo, and that later George Martin would apologize to him for it.
Mhm.
But Ringo had not been with the band for very long, and he just felt for this first single that they needed a drummer. He brought in a session player basically because it just needed to be, he thought, a little bit stronger. And I get the feeling that, you know, I funny listening to it, I don't really think it's not releasable. I see
Mhm.
no problem. Listen, I hear no problem with it. I know that this version was on the, I believe, was on the first anthology volume. But yeah, you are getting a slightly different version. You are getting a different version from the one that was originally released back in the early 60s that's now on the Past Masters
Mhm.
collection because it was not released as part of the UK album series. It was just a 45-inch single. So you do get a slightly different version with that. That's what you're hearing. I just thought I'd bring that up. I know that when we talked about the red and blue releases that are coming out next week, I believe it is, if I'm
Right,
not
right.
mistaken.
Next week on the 10th, I believe, is the date. Yeah.
Yeah, we were both kind of wished that Real Love and Free as a Bird had been included. They're including Now and Then on the
Mhm.
Blue album, but you know they're not putting the other two on there. And we were both hoping they would, and I was really hoping they would, like I said, do the same thing with Now and Then. Use the demixing technology, the AI technology, separate all the tracks to just create a stronger mix than
Mhm.
what could have been created back in the 90s. You know, given the limitations of the cassette tape they were working with, all they could do was remove pops and clicks, you
Yeah.
know, remaster it up to the point where they could, you know, as best as they could get it, and that's what they had to work with. All in all, I listen back, I still think it sounds pretty darn good.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
got back then, even now, I
I
think it
agree.
sounds pretty darn good. But I wish they had done that and put that on the red and blue. The reason I mention this now is because I did hear rumor, okay, and and I want to stress the word rumor, but from a source that said he had a reliable source. I'm not going to name names, but said he had a very reliable source that the plan is that they're going to re-release Anthology and they will do it at that time,
Okay.
and that they are going to remix Anthology. Honestly, I don't think Anthology needs a remixing. It's demos, it's alternate versions, it's work in
Yeah.
progress tracks. I don't think it needs that. That's my personal thought. Maybe what they really mean is remastering. I could see remastering it possibly,
Mhm.
you know, since it's been some time. But anyway, so that's what I have heard. Take that with a huge grain of salt, please.
Okay.
But yeah, that's what I've heard. But I think the better thing would have been to have just put these two tracks on red and blue, but that's not going to happen, as we can see. Like you, Robert, I agree. It's in spite of everything, this is just great that we're getting this.
Yeah.
And I don't know, let us know what you think. Give us your thoughts on the track, good, bad, indifferent. And let us know if you'd like to see us come back later after we've lived with it for a little bit longer and tell us what you and you know see how we feel about it. Because I agree with you, Robert. Time is more the judge. Anyways, though, any final words though before we
No,
say
just this whole, whether it was today or just over the last week or two, I'm just reminded, we know we've both said this again, just how amazing the Beatles legacy is here. Obviously, we grew up with them, TJ, and their music has resonated with us profoundly. But just even looking at all my social media friends and everything, just how important the Beatles are in, all the discussion, pro and con, and just it's just amazing how well over 50 years after they called it quits as a band, how still essential they are in the pop and rock music universe. I mean, it's no surprise, right?
No, no surprise. And I'm just glad. I'm really glad this music, like I said, has resonated across all age ranges, across all
Yeah.
walks of life. We're curious to hear what you have to say. And I'll just say that hopefully next year, we get that Rubber Soul remix and box set. If you're listening, Apple Core, if you're listening, hopefully next year, Rubber Soul. Okay. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. As always, if you like these videos, be sure to hit like, hit subscribe, hit the bell notification icon so you never miss a video. A big thank you to the patron supporters. Patron supporters do receive exclusive weekly videos not available on this channel. And Robert, thank you so much and for joining today. And
You're
we'll
welcome.
see you all in the next video. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.